I'm Taryn Rosenkrantz, and this is Political Trail Mix, where strategy meets storytelling, and every episode unpacks the people, power, and politics shaping our country. Let's dig in. Hey, it's Taryn, and we're here once again with Political Trail Mix. I've got another friend with me here today who I'm excited to introduce. Justin, how are you? Can you tell me a little bit
Hi,
about yourself?
thank you for having me, Taryn. My name is Justin Myers, Executive Director of Blue Leadership Collaborative. We recruit, train, and retain diverse people to run campaigns, to manage critical campaigns at every level of the ballot. Our banner program is the state manager program, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But essentially, our goal is to make sure that the leaders that go to manage campaigns, regardless of the level that they're on, state, congressional, Senate, we want to make sure that these leaders are prepped, well trained, and supported as they go to lead their campaigns and ultimately help Democrats create majorities.
Well, it sounds like this is exactly what this country needs. Everybody's always complaining Democrats don't have a plan, Democrats aren't doing it right. This is doing everything right. So I'm so glad you're doing this. I've been a big fan of the organization. Justin, tell us a little bit about you and how you got here. What is your why here? About why you're working for BLC? How did you get here?
So, I took a very interesting route. BLC is something that's very near and dear to me because of the way that I essentially came to politics. I was very motivated at a young age. I was pretty much a nerd. I was that kid in college that watched C-SPAN, much to chagrin of my roommates who just hated everything politics. But ultimately, I knew I wanted to be a campaign manager. But coming from the family that I came from, two tremendous and wonderful public servants, neither one of whom had a college education when I went to college. One worked for the city, one worked for the federal government. You can imagine that when I jumped into campaign politics and I was unemployed literally every like every 6 months, my
They must
parents
have
were a
loved
little bit worried about me, right?
that.
So, what is really important here is a number of things for BLC. I would say the first is we seek to really attack three barriers. The first barrier, of course, is pay. And for folks that have come into the campaigns traditionally like we did, we can remember the days where we were paid just enough to maybe get by and have enough to buy lunch, although we mostly existed on pizza and beer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We want to make sure that people understand this is a career. So we make sure that folks actually receive a year-long salary. The salary isn't cut off the day after election day. No, it goes through the end of the year. And that includes also health benefits, which I have been promised in my younger days. And when I got in the ground, I did not receive. The second, of course, is training. Anyone who's worked in the campaign know, especially if you actually manage campaign, you know that usually you're kind of just thrown into the deep end of the swimming pool, right? You have to learn how to swim and swim quickly, and often you're swimming through a lot of obstacles, right? So we want to make sure that folks have some knowledge going into campaign managers about the obstacles they may see and how they need to attack them, but also how to make the most out of their own management ability, right? And then the last thing that's really important is networking. Um, you know, uh, One of the stories that is near and dear to me about my path is one day, I worked for the New York City Council. I really wanted to be in federal politics. I just took a bus to DC and it was a one-way ticket. And I wasn't making much in New York City Council, which is why I had that one-way ticket. But I knew if I could just get to this one networking event, at least I thought in my mind, that it would help me become a federal campaign manager. And it surely did.
Yeah.
However, if we want to make campaign management more accessible, if we want to make this an actual career, it's important that we teach folks how to network. And that's exactly what we do. We literally bring the networking to them through convenings that happen while they're in cohort and even post cohort when they become alumni. So those three things, benefits and pay, training, as well as making sure our folks are well networked, is something that we really strive to do.
Tell me a little bit about what you're doing now and what it is. What is Blue Leadership Collaborative?
So, as the executive director of Blue Leadership Collaborative, I'm really excited to announce that we are actually relaunching as our own standalone organization with our own dedicated pack. And our mission will remain the same. Our goal is to recruit, train, and retain the brightest, the best talented folks to become campaign managers. We focus on diversity, of course. That's something that's really important to us. We want to make sure those that are leading our campaigns and helping candidates in this space are, of course, diverse. And we're going to lead with training them to make sure that they're well equipped to win races, critical races at every level of the ballot. But again, really excited to be here. We are relaunching as our own entity, and we're looking forward to a big year, and of course, talking to you more about our work.
And tell me a little bit about the why of Blue Leadership Collaborative.
Yeah, the why is one that is somewhat based in my own personal experiences, and I think the experiences of a lot of other different people who have gone on to become senior leaders in this campaign space. To break it down, it's really simple. It's all about pay and benefits. It's about training, and it's about networking. And as someone that figured out early how to get on campaigns, which was through volunteering. I couldn't really afford to do that. So I actually had to do that summer when I wasn't teaching. I'm a former public school teacher, so I had a free summer. So I was getting paid so I could volunteer. Coming from a working class background, where my parents were both public servants, and they worked really hard to make me the second college graduate in our family. They were really concerned for me when their son go on this job where I was unemployed every 6 or 7 months, right? And then when I finally got into this space, I was a little bit hard-headed. I knew what my goal was, and at that time it was to be a campaign manager. So I was going to run through walls to be a campaign manager. But I was very fortunate in that I was able to pick up some of the things that allowed for me to get there, whether it was a mentor or taking a chance on a one-way bus ticket to DC from New York City to go to a networking event to try to figure out how I can be on federal races. So BLC tackles those things, right? It allows for the managers that are in our cohort to have a full year of pay. No longer are managers, at least in our cohort, the ones that we support, they're not going to they're no longer stopping their pay right after election day. It's happening through December. We're making sure that they're getting trained on everything from how to manage a candidate to how to manage a candidate's kitchen cabinet, to how to manage consultants, right? And of course, all of the important things like how to raise money and how to manage cash flow and how to manage a budget. We're taking care of all of that in the front end to make sure that when they get on their campaigns, it's not like being thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool. No, they actually are familiar with a lot of this material, not only because they have previous campaign experience, but because we've spent 4 to 6 weeks training them on the important aspects that they have to manage. And then last but not least, networking. And networking is really difficult if you don't have the ability to get to important folks, or at least the know-how, right?
Right, right.
Oftentimes, you
Well,
know how we are. It may take us 2 to 3 days to get to an email that may not be priority because we're worried about so many other things are on fire at the moment, right? Or trying to figure out how to get into the right room to talk to the right people. So at BLC, we literally bring the network to the cohort members. We do it through a series of summer convenings where they meet a lot of different people who are political professionals who will be hiring for campaign manager positions in the near future. And we also do it by giving them a coach. And that coach stays with them for the duration with them, excuse me, the duration of the cohort, and also post cohort when they're alums. They help them navigate this career and make the best career choices for them.
so Justin, I love everything you're saying. I love everything you guys are doing. I relate. I love this is why we have folks on this podcast is because I love telling, the stories of how people got where they are. So everything about the one-way ticket and networking is like bringing all the love to you for that because we shouldn't make it that hard. I'm curious though, it is such a hard political landscape right now. There's all this backlash about diversity. All of a sudden, it's like the opposite, where every step forward feels like a step back. Tell me, like, are you doing things differently? Like, what are you doing to help recruit? Like, how do you go out there and find these people?
Yeah, one story comes to mind that I think it's really important to share. And I'm sure a number of people have had this experience when they've been trying to find managers or high level senior staffers to fill important roles. At one point in time, I was a political director at DCCC. It was one of those dream jobs for me, and I loved it for the most part. Learned a lot, and was able to build my network, which I mentioned earlier is really important to building out a career in politics. But one of the things that was really disheartening, and I knew it, but it was just highlighted while I was in the building at DCCC, is when we had a resume drop for our critical races throughout the country, and a lot of the applicants came in. And they did nothing wrong. They were there because they were interested in managing important races, as I was when I was their age, right? But one problem, the entire room looked the same.
Mm.
It was all white men. And that for me was problematic when we're talking about a party that has the values that Democrats have, but also the type of people that we need to engage in order to create these majorities and flip executive seats, right? So for me, it was really important in that moment to continue to think through, as I always have, is how to create some diversity. And at that moment, it was trying to figure out how I could find more women managers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the moment, I actually think that the diversity amongst managers who are managing critical races, right? Really important races that the DCCC cares about, that DGA cares about, that the DSCC cares about. I think it's better. I want to say that BLC, because of what we've been doing, particularly since 2021, plays a role in that. I think there's also been a concerted effort within progressive politics and the Democratic Party to do it, but we're not where we should be, right? In many ways, we have had such a late start. I talked about being the political director at DCCC. I believe I was the second Black political director in that building, and that was 2015, right? So we need more intentional efforts like Blue Leadership Collaborative to basically focus our efforts on intentionally recruiting, but also equipping these managers to go out and be successful, because we want to make sure that we're setting them up for success so that they can have real manager roles where they control every aspect of the campaign.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you're talking to someone who's like run a digital political
Right. Right.
tech company. And so like that's like, there's like it was a unicorn for many, many years. And now I can honestly say there are a lot of female-owned
Yes.
digital political tech companies. So I feel like we're making progress. We're getting there. I'm curious, like it must be like having all these children that like go out and graduate and they're like going out in the world. Like, what are you most excited about when they get out there? And what are you most excited about this cycle that for these folks to get out there?
I always tell them, and we do this for a cohort, I hesitate to call them my children. Although, yeah, I have
They're
my
grown
own.
adults and they're
These are
very
grown
smart, but it
people, right?
does feel
But
like
in
you're
many
like,
ways,
yeah, right.
I do feel like they are part of my family. When you
Yeah,
spend the time that we do pouring into these managers, you do care about every
right.
aspect of their life. And it's not just how they perform while they're in a campaign. You also care about their health. You care about whether they have a social life outside of politics. You care about whether they're interacting with their family and friends while they're on campaigns, because you want that individual to be healthy. Because if they're healthy, not only will they go out and be able to attain their own personal goals, but they'll also be able to contribute to democratic politics in a real way. So when they leave us at the end of that 6 week intensive, some ways it feels like maybe you're dropping a kid off, or maybe a
Right.
sister
That's sort
or a
of what I
brother off
meant.
in
It's like,
college,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
maybe
They're
you're
leaving
dropping
the
a
nest.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
dropping a sister or a brother off at college, and there is a little bit of angst. You're nervous. It's in some ways it's sad to say goodbye to them and not see them every day.
Yeah.
But I am also super excited for a number of reasons. One, because they're attaining a personal goal that's really important to them and becoming a campaign manager. And for a lot of these managers, they're coming from marginalized backgrounds, right? So this is the way that they can create real change and have real impact at a young age,
Hmm.
in a really short amount of time, right? So that's the first thing. We're really excited about that. And then the second thing is you know they're going to come back somewhat of a different person, both personally and professionally, right? You have to be resilient to manage campaigns or just be on campaigns. You're going to see a lot, right? Whether it's the tough times you go through with your candidate, or how the other side is attacking you, or dealing with a staffer on the day-to-day basis. You are going to grow professionally. And then as an individual, you're also going to grow personally because you've made it through a tough thing. And at the end of that, you're going to look back, and we always say this, you're going to say, damn, I just did that. And you're going to be hungry for more, right? And that's
Yeah.
our hope.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, I'll tell you, things are changing constantly and evolving in politics, and certainly since we were started being on the road back in the day. But one thing that comes up over and over again that I love to talk with anyone who comes on with me about is AI and sort of the prevalence of AI in politics and sort of the pros and the cons. But I'm just wondering, especially because you're taking this 6 week intensive to train these folks, how you're dealing with AI and how you're telling them to deal with it.
Yeah, one of the things that's really exciting is that, in our relaunch, we are now a separate organization from Zinc, but that connection with Zinc still remains. And Zinc used to have an entity called Digi Labs, where they talked a lot about how AI would affect campaigns and politics. So we were able to glean a lot of information from them. In particular, there was a person that led the organization named Matt Hodges, who was just brilliant. He and Ben Resnick both understood AI really well when it first kind of came onto the campaign scene. So for us, we know this is going to change the political landscape, right? So we want to make sure that this is something that we train to. We want to make sure that our managers understand how they can not only think through how to make use of AI on their campaign, whether it's writing scripts or 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 thinking through something else where it is research based and they may need some help from AI, making sure they're checking it, of course. But then on the flip side, also being able to recognize deep AI fake videos that are going to persist during campaign cycles. Understand how the other side, how Republicans are using AI, so that we can make sure we're combating it. We want to make sure that that in itself, it's something that they understand, and we're certainly going to train the upcoming cohort on it as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good that comes with AI all the time, and there's a lot of things that we just need to make sure that we're having a human look at, and there's a lot of things that are, scary and dangerous, but if we can teach people from the beginning how to use it the right way, it's going to make all the difference in the world. So there's just every word you speak is another reason that this is so needed in our society and for politics. I am going to say that I love sharing stories. I feel like I'm really lagging, so we're gonna,
Mhm.
let's see here. Dana, we're gonna re-ask that question because it was really laggy. Um, I would love to know from your perspective one of your favorite stories, whether we like to call them star stories. Like, tell me something that makes you so proud. There's a story that is the best of the best of like maybe it's a graduate, maybe it's something for you that you're most proud of that's happened on the campaign trail.
So it's there's a lot, right? There's a lot of things that we're proud of, whether it's helping to flip two state houses, Pennsylvania, Virginia, expanding, creating a historical Democratic expansion in the House of Delegates in Virginia just last year. To the many graduates that go on to manage really big and critical races. I would say personally, something that is really important to me is helping these managers just make it through their first cycle managing. Because in my belief, I think in our collective belief and what we've seen in terms of how a manager's confidence grows over the course of a cycle, particularly during their first race, we know that if we can support them as they get to the end of that campaign, regardless of whether or not they win or lose, if they are supported well, they are more likely to continue on this campaign management
Yeah.
path, which is what we want. So there have been a number of instances in recent years where managers, mostly people of color, were going to be let go for some reason.
Mm.
Oftentimes, it was a miscommunication between the manager and the caucus. maybe folks not setting expectations right and then holding that individual accountable. But something that has always persisted is that when people of color in particular, when women in particular, or different people are not doing well on a campaign, they typically do not find out until it's time to put them on a performance, a PIP,
Yeah.
or until it's time to let them go,
Mhm.
right? So thinking through how we can make sure we're giving folks constant feedback so when we don't get to that point is important. But there have been a number of instances where we have literally just worked with the caucus on a
Yeah.
manager's performance, right? We've actually worked with the caucus on how they communicate with that manager, how they set expectations with that manager, how they hold them accountable. That has allowed for us to retain that manager in that position. And a number of those managers have gone on to manage really critical races, particularly at the congressional level. So I would say that's probably our biggest win
Yeah.
is helping people make it through this cycle, but also helping caucuses understand how they can maybe hold some of these managers accountable and talking to the managers about how they can truly develop a good relationship, a productive relationship with the caucus.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to work in politics in general, right? Like, so on both sides, there's an education process. That's why I love when you were like talking to them about it, so, like before something happens, so that you can really have that. Like, I mean, this is like unheard of if you think about 20 years ago that like you would even have a performance improvement plan would be like part of a PIP would be part of a discussion. It was like somebody flew off the handle and may have just like fired you, right? Like, and
100%.
that was it. So having these building blocks and having these like just trainings are so fantastic. And I think that is the ultimate star story. I
Yes.
love it.
Yes.
I love it. I'm going to ask you just a few more questions, but I just like this is kind of like outside of what the folks you're training. I ask this to a lot of folks who come on because we are in politics. And so I'm like, what would you tell the candidate, the potential candidate who wants to run? Somebody says, I really want to get involved. I want to run. This is like instead of training the people who are going to be the managers, I'm like, let's train the candidates for a second here. What would be your advice to them if they wanted to run?
Well, besides know your why, and you know this, there's so many candidates that get into this and like you ask them why they're running and they don't know. Like
Yeah.
knowing your why is important,
Yeah.
but also equally important and is having people that can help you develop your why, right? So um choosing your staff and your consultants, uh, it's really important. And again, I love my time at DCCC. I go back to my time there. The same problem we had with the managers, right? Where most of them, and I don't want the white guys that are watching this to think that I'm dissing that I'm not. I just think that we need to have a larger pool of applicants and managers and consultants and all those good things. But when I was at DCCC, you would go on these races, and again, all of the consultants, a homogenous collective, right? Um, and when you sit and you think about the conversations that you're having on those calls, and let's say you have a congressional district that is mostly suburban, but you have an urban pocket that has lots of Black and brown people, and all you have on your consultant team are folks that do not identify with those Black and brown folks, talking about how to engage them and how to turn them out. Those
Yeah.
two things don't connect,
Yeah.
right? So making sure you are hiring staff and you are hiring consultants that will allow for you to engage the electorate that is in your district the right way, in a cultural competent way, is only going to help you win.
100%. 100%. And we talked about this before, but I will say it's just so critically important that like the manager understands what they do and do not know, right? Like so that is something that like having a diverse pool of people there means that you're bringing more people to the table so that everybody can bring something to the table and have better understanding and help us win, which I think is what everybody is so set on for November. It's just like period of bad news after bad news. people are feeling like they've lost a lot of hope. I hope that like our conversation today is making people realize, look, Democrats are organized, they're ready, they're training people to be even better, to run even better races. We're really out there doing the work and doing and addressing some of those criticisms. But for those who are, sort of feeling helpless, like I can't believe what's happening in Minnesota, I can't believe what's happening across this country and on so many cities. What is it that I do? What can I do? And I'd love to sort of hear, especially as you were saying, like, somebody who may not even realize there's opportunities for them. What would you tell someone who wants to get involved in politics in some way, how to do it, and what their best next steps are of what to do to get involved and help?
100%. When we just look at history, particularly in this country, and the way that long-term injustices, long-term wrongs have been righted, it has never come about solely because of our faith and our trust in government. It's never come about because we sat in our hands. Women didn't gain the right to vote because women sat in their hands and did nothing, right? Like Black people didn't gain the right to vote because we just waited for the government to act and did not take any action, right? Like right now, in the moment that we are in, it is the time for direct action. And action can look like many different things. And that's the thing that I'm hoping that folks that are kind of sitting at home and feeling somewhat disconnected or even saddened or traumatized by what's happening in this country understand you can get involved in your own way, right? Like I always say, there has to be an inside and an outside strategy. There has to be an activist strategy as well as a strategy to figure out how to organize elected officials to do the right thing, right? So
Yeah.
for me, that means that any individual, one, should take a simple action on things they care about. It's a simple action by like just calling your elected official, right? Getting your friends and family to really voice their opinion to their congressional member, to their senator, to their council member, to their state legislator, making sure that those folks know that if they don't vote the right way, if they don't support the policies that you as a citizen, as a voter want them to support, that you're going to get them out of there. Because there's one thing I know all politicians are scared of, right? And what's that? Losing an election,
Election.
right? So we
Losing.
losing, right? So we sometimes don't understand, or I don't want to say we don't understand. I think we miss the importance of people power and
Yeah.
what that can mean when lobbying on important issues. And then there's going to be our friends who are more activists, right? Get out there, protest, right?
Yeah.
Build petitions. I think any way that you can make your voice heard is really important. And for me, if we actually want to get the folks that are truly being impacted to take action, and by the way, a lot of the people that are truly being impacted by the actions of this government, unfortunately, a lot of them don't vote because we aren't engaging them the right way. It's incumbent upon us as political professionals to figure out how we can get those folks more involved. And some of that's going to come in the form of just having a conversation on a
Mhm.
door or on the phone or in the digital space about not only what is currently happening and how it is hurting your average American, right? Your working class or poor or immigrant or someone that's marginalized, right? Like it also has to be more forward thinking. It has to be, and this is what we Democrats will do to fix it. This is a policy agenda that we have that we're going to put forward to address your very real concerns. It's a two-way street. And I think the more we as political professionals are able to engage people in real ways, the more we will see this electorate respond and make sure we don't have the Donald Trumps coming to power and hurting our country in the way that he is.
Very inspiring, and I hope folks out there hear that because it is so much about not just changing the world through these very ginormous things that you have to do. Some of it is just having a conversation, reaching out and listening and talking to somebody and letting them know, the fact instead, not even arguing. It's like just talking to them about what's happening in the world and what they can do and where we can be. And we all know it's true. The more you tell your elected officials how you feel, the better results you're going to get. So for sure.
100%. I mean, we've seen movement in the last week, right?
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of it has come from the pressure
Yeah.
that people are putting on this administration. And shout out to folks in Minnesota. Like
Yeah.
they are an inspiration. And it's something that we all should be looking to as a model for how we can continue to fight this administration.
100%. God, I literally am awestruck every day by the people of Minnesota because they are so strong and they are just so resilient. No, I mean, how many more things can happen in this like small area and radius over the last few years? Like, it's just these horrific events, and they just seem to at least come back stronger and more committed to their fight. And we were talking about
Their
there's
courage.
caucuses
Yeah.
in a couple, yeah, there's caucuses in a few weeks, and they're coming up, and everybody's like they're scared to leave their house, but there are so many people who are in the same breath of saying, I'm scared to leave my house, but I'm going to do it because I got
Yeah.
to show up to this caucus. And I was scared, but I went out and went to this vigil and I did this, it's like the amount of courage is just, I'm always awestruck, but I totally agree. And this is the kind of stuff to train the managers out there to be able to deal with the real and tough things that are happening every minute in this country is no joke. So to the people that keep doing it, to the managers, to the trainers, and to you who is continuing to make sure that there's all these great folks out there that can go run these races and help us win, because obviously we have never needed it more. I'm going to ask my last question, and it's going to be just nice segue in, if I don't say so myself, which is we do have this big election in November, and we need the House, we need the Senate. That's what's up in front of us. There's lots of gubernatorials and races and across the country and state caucuses as well, which we really, really need there because we can see that the states are becoming more and more important. And I would love to hear your prediction. You
Yeah,
ask everybody, what's your prediction?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. I am. Um, I'm one of those folks that is very much, again, hopeful, but I think that we have to do our part as political professionals, tell the right stories, engage people the right way, and let them know what's at stake. If we kind of fall back into the position of just um, letting the other side turn out votes for us because
Yeah,
people are so pissed at them, I'm not sure if we're going to have the type of impact that we actually want to have, if we're going to have the gains that we want. But
yeah,
if we're simultaneously also presenting a plan on affordability, on how we're going to deal with ICE, on how we're going to um, stop the focus externally of our country, right, and focus on the citizens here and what they need, I truly believe that we will have a huge, huge night and historical gains in the House. And I think that we'll get really close in the Senate.
yeah,
But it's really important for us, for the work that we do, to engage the folks that we were talking about in your previous question, because we know that
yeah,
midterm elections, there's a steep drop off in terms of turnout.
yeah,
And it happens with our voters. So now is the time, before we get to the presidentials, now is the time where we should be fine tuning that message that will allow for us to not only have credible and huge gains this coming November, but also, in 2028, when we're looking to,
which when we're really, yeah, yeah, right.
right? So
When there's even more at stake.
100%.
For sure. Oh, I am so glad. I've loved having you on. I love chatting with you today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on, and look forward to talking to you more about BLC in the future.
Thanks for listening to Political Trail Mix. Make sure to follow and review wherever you get your podcasts and stay connected with me on Instagram and YouTube. Let's keep this conversation going.